Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cyberside Chats Live. My name is Sherry Davidoff.
I'm Matt Duran.
And today we are going to talk about China. I think there is enough material about China in the news today, Chinese hacking specifically, to last us at least a month, if not 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the rest of our lives.
I mean, we could at least finish out the year talking about China. But
So the topic of today is Chinese backdoors or even known vulnerabilities embedded in devices. So things that are made in China, which are shipped around the world, and increase risk for all of us. That said, just this week we've had news about Anthropic AI being used by China for attacks. There were Asus routers that are being attacked by China. So we will have more podcasts on China and hacking coming up for sure.
yeah.
So with that, should we jump into transportation?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Buses can be controlled by China. This is what spurred it all. So researchers in Oslo from the Transportation Authority drove a bus into a secure location and
decommissioned mine.
A decommissioned mine. I know. How cool is that? Like, I want to do that. And they did experiments, and what they found was that there was a Romanian SIM card in it that actually allowed the manufacturer, who was a Chinese-based manufacturer, to control the buses. Specifically, they could turn off the power to the buses.
Yeah, and this was in China. This is advertised as a safety feature, so that if something goes wrong with the bus, they can disable the bus in the middle of the street. But I mean, you could tell how that could be used.
This
for
would have
something
saved
not great.
Sandra Bullock in the movie Speed.
Yeah, exactly.
Saying,
It would have been fine.
Please, China, disable my bus. It's run away.
Do people remember the movie Speed? That was a great movie.
I did not get through the whole thing. But yes, so they drove the Chinese-made bus in. They found that it could be remotely controlled. And then Norway alerted Denmark and the UK. And so the UK now is going through a process of determining what restrictions should be placed on transportation in the UK.
Yeah.
In the U.S., we do have restrictions on components that are used for cars, for example, and other parts of critical infrastructure, but we don't, to my knowledge, have restrictions on buses.
Well, buses and mining equipment and things like that, I mean, they all function over OTA software updates or over-the-air software updates, so they have to have some level of remote connectivity. And if we're getting that from another country, and that was the big problem that Denmark and the UK really wanted to look into, is all these devices that we have that have this over-the-air ability to update firmware and basically alter the configuration of something, could that be used for a malicious purpose? And I think the answer is yes.
Yes, but China, I thought China made a good point in response. Yeah. They were basically like, don't stand in the way of progress.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to be able to do remote updates. Okay, you make a good point, but we also don't want you to remotely shut down our infrastructure.
I mean,
in a fight.
That seems like a fair ask.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, this is part of a pattern. I thought that the backdoor in cranes was really interesting.
Oh,
I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, no, I did. The ZPMC cranes.
Yes. So the Chinese manufacturer ZPMC makes about 80% of the ship-to-shore cranes at U.S. ports.
So the ones that are sitting in the big harbors and actually pulling containers off of ships as they go,
and I'm from New Jersey, so I grew up watching containerization happen. So these are really critically important. And they found there was a whole congressional report on this. It's actually worth a read. They found that there were unauthorized cellular modems installed in those cranes that represented a significant backdoor. And again, I could see the manufacturer saying what manufacturers have been saying for years, which is that, we're doing it. We need that in order to provide over-the-air updates. Otherwise, it's a security risk.
Well, and they used it for monitoring operations. And I mean, the company actually came out and gave an entire reasoning for why they had these things in there. I mean, they have a giant fleet of these devices all across the world, really.
Yep.
I mean, they're a major player in the U.S., but they're also a big player in other countries. And they want to be able to monitor that fleet of equipment from Shanghai, basically.
Yeah.
And but the problem there is that there is now a cellular transmitter on the device that can potentially disable it. And I mean, you could bring shipping to a halt if you knock the cranes offline. Like that would be detrimental. Yeah.
And buses. Honestly, this reminds me of an incident that happened when I was working at a children's hospital when I was a little baby adult. And I still remember there was a device on the network somewhere that was spewing network traffic. And for those of you that have been boots on the ground security, you probably know it can sometimes be really hard in a big campus to find the physical device.
Yeah.
And I finally found it. It was in, a building I didn't expect, on a floor where someone had to give me access in a dark room with babies in it. It was a NICU. It was an infected neonatal ICU. And this was a shock because nobody even knew that the neonatal ICUs at that time were connected to the internet. And I think that happens all the time these days, where manufacturers are like, of course, we have a back door in there. We call it, our remote monitoring system.
Sure, yeah.
And we plug it in when we install it. Thanks, shipyards. And that's just the way it works.
Yeah.
And it's not, often they're not being tracked. So that gets to access bills of materials, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of this. I mean, vendors really do need to disclose if there is some kind of like remote access feature on a device. And I mean, having a remote access feature on a piece of equipment is not a bad thing necessarily.
No.
I mean, it can be really useful. It can track, the device analytics. It can track for problems with any of the actual mechanical operations or something.
Updates.
It can be good
like,
for security updates.
This.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. But if you don't know it's there and it's piping data to like China, as an example, that could be a little dicey, especially if it's sensitive data about a key operational factors or something like that.
So one of our big recommendations today is going to be the A-bomb, Access Bill of Materials.
We keep coming up
similar to the S-bomb, but with an A.
Yeah, we keep coming up with new acronyms for this, but yeah.
But yeah, we need to be thinking about what is the Access Bill of Materials, or making sure every vendor provides information about who has access.
Right.
And if they have remote access, is it through some kind of key-based authentication? If so, who stores the keys? Is it through a password? Is it through some other mechanism? And we need to start tracking that.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot of organizations that are centrally tracking access, remote access to vendor devices.
I know of a couple. And most of them are here in the U.S. and they're in food manufacturing, and it's their floor equipment that's all remotely accessible because it has to be remotely maintained. Those guys are, it's the food industry in general. Yeah, they're great about this. The food industry in general is on it.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, they have these very, very strict contracts about, because, I mean, food is absolutely critical in the country. They have these really strict contracts about understanding exactly what is happening with those machines. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've gone on a little detour. Should we come back to medical device backdoors?
We could do that, or we could do solar inverters and power grid.
Ooh, yes, solar.
You want to do solar?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we're moving to solar, and when it comes down to massive solar farms, I mean, you don't have technicians that individually go to every single inverter that's on every single panel that's in the farm. All of those are remotely accessible, and spoiler, a lot of that hardware comes from
China,
yeah, exactly. And so there's a series of European lawmakers that are warning that kind of access to their solar inverters could pose a huge risk to the electrical infrastructure of the nation. And it completely makes sense. I mean, when we look at, so think about like Spain and Iberia, or the Iberian Peninsula in 2025. They had a massive blackout, lasted 10 hours.
I was just thinking about that.
There were multiple deaths associated with it. 35,000 people had to be rescued off of the transit systems that were, the underground trains that run through that part of the country. Yeah, no, it was pretty bad. And that wasn't a cyber attack. That was a glitch in their actual power matrix. But it showcases that, I mean, if we're relying heavily on solar and that comes under attack from a nation state or a cyber criminal who just steals an API key and gets access, I mean, that could have detrimental consequences.
Well, and the power grid is not as resilient as we want it to be. Even small issue can have these really big ripple effects. I think that's what we've learned over the past couple of decades.
Downstream is massive when it comes to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I know Europe is looking at building more solar infrastructure and providing funding for that within the EU so that they're independent and they don't have to worry about somebody else being able to turn off the lights.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's key. One of the things that caught my attention was a real documented backdoor in a medical device earlier this year, back in February, the Context CMS 8000.
Yeah.
So this is a Chinese-made vital signs monitor, not dissimilar to the NICU, actually, that I had to chase down.
No, I mean it's the thing that's in every hospital room and every ER room that hooks up to you and monitors your heart rate and oxygen and everything else.
Yeah. So the U.S. government found, documented, and disclosed this backdoor, and here's what it could do. It had a backdoor that allows download and execution of unverified remote files. It overwrites files on the device so customers cannot verify what software is running. Ooh. And it contacts an IP address associated with a third-party university, not a medical vendor. So there's a big warning there about that, and a note that we have thousands of these devices installed in the United States. So one of the challenges is that we have such a decentralized procurement system, and hospitals in particular have very limited funding to replace these devices. So often you have to just move forward with what you have, and what can you do in those cases?
Yeah, I mean that's tough. There's always that question about like if I buy something from an unknown vendor, and hospitals are a really great example. And this is not to disparage them or anything like that, but oftentimes they're not going for like especially smaller hospitals, they don't really have the funds to go for like the highest grade of medical equipment. They're going to go for something that is good and will completely function, but is not necessarily something that is, a U.S.-made, fully vetted device. They may get something from overseas.
Even if they do, there might be limitations to how often updates can be performed and things like that.
But if you have a device like that on your network, I mean, how do you go about making sure that it's actually secure? Knowing what we know now, and having seen that this is a possibility, how do we stop something like that from being a problem, even if we're faced with not being able to replace the device?
Yeah, and what we see is, number one, if you can, just taking it off the network,
sure.
or really heavily segmenting and monitoring it. I know in Norway they're looking at installing firewalls. So good job, you guys. And also delaying signals to those devices, I assume, so that they could be vetted or reviewed or something along those lines.
Pass it through some kind of filter or something.
Yeah,
like that.
and obviously, talk to the manufacturer, talk to whoever provided you the device. But again, this is all happening back to the buses. This was happening through a Romanian-made SIM card. So you don't always, it's not always clear who the ultimate actor may be.
True, yeah.
Yeah, with our very complex supply chain. Okay, where do you want to go from here?
Well, there's a couple things we could talk about. We could talk about robotic dogs.
I was just thinking about robotic dogs.
Let's do robotic dogs, yeah.
Is this a backdoor? Tell everybody what happened.
Okay, so there's a firm out there called Unitree. They released a robotic dog called the Go 1. And Axios did a report on this back in April of 2025 where they talked about how insecure these robotic dogs were. And it reminds me of the scare about Roombas spying on you or something like that.
I do not trust my Roomba.
You shouldn't. I don't even have a Roomba.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, anyway. But the funny thing about this was when we looked at what was actually wrong with those robotic dogs, it looked a lot less like an intentional backdoor and more like the same kind of problems you would see with like a baby camera that you bought off of Amazon or something like that.
So anybody in the world could browse and view the camera. Like, this is not subtle, you guys. It's like, oh, whoops, anybody can actually watch where your robot dog is going.
Well, and there was a whole list of vulnerabilities associated with the dog. I mean, first was the Bluetooth system that they used. And they used this system, third-party system called CloudSail. And CloudSail had a universal API key for all of those dogs, and the API key got leaked. And there's no way to change it. So now all of those dogs are vulnerable to that kind of attack. They also found out that the dogs were consistently sending data back to China without users' consent. So that's probably not great. And then this is my favorite part. The firmware for the dogs had hard-coded credentials that couldn't be changed.
Oh, wow. So they have all the problems of like a classic IoT device.
Yeah, classic Internet of Things device. Like your basic nursery camera has the exact same software vulnerabilities.
So basically, you could launch the Mirai botnet and take over
a
fleet of robotic dogs.
Robot dogs.
Oh my God.
That's actually kind of terrifying.
We need a modification of the Mirai botnet. Okay, I might eat those words at some point.
No.
Don't do that,
Yeah,
you
don't
guys.
do that.
Don't do that.
Please.
The Mirai botnet source code is out there, so that's a real risk.
Yeah. It's fun to work with, though.
Robotic dogs taking over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the last thing, back to energy. We're seeing investments in the EU, and hopefully we'll see more of this in the United States as well, where we're trying to make it so that our critical infrastructure is not dependent on China. At the same time, I do want to point out that this is a long-running feud.
Yeah.
And China, conversely, has accused the U.S. of attacking it as well and planting backdoors in devices. So maybe we should talk about that too.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, this is definitely happening in the reverse as well. It's not just the U.S. and the U.K. worried about China.
Well, and I don't think that it would necessarily surprise anyone if that was true, but we're still in speculation mode at this point.
Well, back when Snowden revealed a ton of information. One of those big revelations was backdoors that the NSA was planting, targeting a major Chinese manufacturer.
Yeah.
Huawei?
Huawei, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and China, I'm sure for China, that created a lot of concerns about the security of their supply chain as well.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then there have also been rumors over the years of U.S.-based equipment being intercepted and backdoors being planted before being sent out to foreign countries.
Sure. Well, and we also have the problem of counterfeit devices being sent out. You remember a couple of years ago, they found like over 1 million counterfeit Cisco routers that were all originating from China. They were branded exactly like Cisco. They took Cisco firmware to a point, but we had no idea what else was in those devices.
I also wonder, does China really need to plant backdoors in there? Because the Chinese government, the laws in China really are designed to make it so they can collect information about zero-day vulnerabilities before other people have a chance to discover it.
Sure.
So the national government is allowed to review manufacturer's source code, for example. And even if they don't plant anything in that source code, as we've talked about before, just having access to source code makes it much, much easier for you to find exploitable vulnerabilities.
Right.
So I'm guessing they're reviewing the source code, they're finding and stockpiling their exploitable zero-day vulnerabilities, and then they can leverage them whenever they want.
Well, they can also compel access to data collected by those devices. Which,
That's
I mean,
true,
remember,
too.
that was the entire problem with TikTok originally, was that all of that data was going back to a Chinese firm, and the Chinese government could then compel them to have access to all the analytics data that was coming back out of TikTok at that point. The accusation was they were spying on U.S. citizens using a social media app.
Well, I remember early in COVID when everybody suddenly started to use Zoom, there was also an important server based in China as well. And again, that's why we have those concerns. I feel like it had keys on it or something that could have been.
I don't remember exactly what it was, but
we won't speculate. But yeah, just having information stored in China can potentially allow the government to review it. So that's absolutely a concern.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, do we want to talk about Anthropic really quick?
Well, okay, but we can't scoop ourselves.
We won't scoop ourselves.
Give us a little summary, and then we're going to save a bigger conversation for another day coming up soon.
Yeah, so this is going to be a full episode that we're going to do, but in short, Anthropic has just released that they have disrupted a Chinese-based hacking campaign using Anthropic AI as one of the primary components of it. Now, we're going to get into how impactful the use of the AI engine was in that campaign, because there's some dispute about it, and that's, I think, what's going to make a good episode. But,
yes.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that one.
Chinese hackers still have some job security. AI is not going to replace them just yet,
Not
is
just
the bottom
yet,
line.
but
yeah,
we're close.
So we'll talk about that soon. There was also a big dump of toolkit that was used by Chinese hackers. So we've got a lot more coming up. And yes, Chinese hacking is pretty much always in the news a little bit, but I would say it's more in the news this month than ever before. In the past.
Well, I mean, it seems that way, but wait till next month.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, why don't we take some questions? Thank you, guys.
Yeah. So the question one is, if we're buying things like cameras, inverters, or network gear, what's the simplest way for a smaller IT team to check whether a device has hidden remote access paths before we deploy it?
Ooh.
No, go for it.
Ask.
Number
one, ask.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Ask the person implementing, because sometimes it's not the manufacturer. It is your MSP, or it's whoever is implementing that's like, I'll hook this up to the network now and make sure the remote access works.
Mm-hmm. The other thing you could keep in mind is that if it's something that's a popular enough device, odds are good somebody else has also had that same question. So do a little bit of research on the project or on the product ahead of time. And in a lot of cases, you'll find people who have already done the legwork on it, which could save you a ton of time, especially for a smaller team.
That's a very good point. And then if you have a lab, you can, like ours, you can throw it in the lab. And your lab doesn't have to be complicated. I would just, it could be complemented. We have a very nice lab.
We have a very complimentary lab.
Yes. But basically, just make sure that if there is malware on that device, or if someone's able to pivot into it, they can't get to the rest of your infrastructure.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
virtual machines, do not reuse passwords in any laboratory. But yeah, monitor any device and see what traffic is coming out, because if there is a backdoor, it's sometimes very obvious.
Yeah. What was the sign we used to have above the forensics lab door? Give it a little Wireshark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, just watch the packets flow, and if it's something weird, then
there you go.
Follow it. You know what we didn't do, Matt?
What?
We didn't do our key takeaways.
Oh, we didn't. You want to do those before we take another question?
Yes.
Okay.
So what can we learn from the recent news about Chinese manufactured devices and backdoors? One we covered already. You need to require an access bill of materials. So any connected device in your environment, you need to be tracking who has access to it, who controls the keys, how is the authentication performed, and think about, how could this go wrong? Is it a risk you're willing to take?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this goes for like a lot of different access paths. It could be, a radio transmitter, it could be a cell transmitter, it could be a SIM card, it could be, anything you could think of. But if it's there, you need to know about it, and your manufacturer needs to be upfront that it's there and actually functioning for some kind of purpose.
Yep. So after this podcast, make a spreadsheet, call it your A-bomb, your access bill of materials, and just start writing it down.
Yeah, there you go.
And obviously there's SaaS products and other platforms that you can use to start tracking these
completely
effectively as well.
Yeah. Next, you need to treat how you get your hardware, so your procurement cycle for it, the same way you do your software supply chain. I mean, vet your vendors. Make sure that the product you're getting is either certified or has been tested thoroughly. Make sure you get a security report back from it. And this comes down to routers, cameras. I mean, we see these kind of devices being utilized, especially consumer grade ones, which end up in a lot of small businesses, being used for cyber attacks in a lot of different cases. The Mushtik botnet, the Mariah botnet, all of those rely on insecure devices like Internet of Things or routers. And so, yeah, basically what we want here is just make sure you know what the device is, you can update the firmware and hardware on it, and that you have an understanding of where data from that device is actually being sent.
Yeah, I have to say, when you start thinking about vetting all of your hardware, it can be pretty overwhelming.
It can be.
And I think that's why it's so important to simplify your procurement. If you can, go with the same vendors. And, that way you'll have less vetting to do. Obviously, it's hard to go back in time and simplify things, but you can at least start going forward.
Yeah, there's a reason why when you look at HVAC systems and climate control systems, you see Honeywell everywhere.
Yes.
And it's because they're a known vendor that is, for the most part, known to be very reputable. And so, yeah, people trust them.
Yeah, and lean on your MSPs or any third parties that are helping you with procurement. If you're relying on a third party to procure devices for you, ask them, have you vetted this vendor? And make sure, again, you're treating hardware like software.
Yep.
Cool. Establish and enforce a simple connected device procurement policy. So set clear rules. What are you willing to accept in terms of risk, and what are you not willing to accept?
Sure.
And just starting with a policy, I think, is step one.
Next, the big thing here is we want to make sure we're reducing exposure. And this goes for basically anything on your network. This is a just general fundamental security element. Make sure that you're segmenting, that there are access restrictions in place, that devices that don't need access to the public internet don't have them. And again, just make sure you have a good understanding of your network topology and what the potential risks or jumping points are. So if somebody gains access to a security camera, can they hit your domain controller or something like that?
Pivot points. Our pen testers love Internet of Things devices.
Oh yeah, they're great.
And sometimes a very simple foothold, even without domain creds, can ultimately lead to a full domain admin takeover. So, strengthen your third-party risk management processes for any vendors of connected equipment. So I'd say, again, when you're doing third-party risk management, we're prioritizing some vendors over others. And if they have remote access to equipment, I would bump that up a level of priority because that means they could potentially have access to your environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a pen test example that we put out, getting control of like a water company or water treatment control panel.
Yes.
Yeah, that exact kind of thing. It was available on the public internet, and people would be able to break into it through a fairly simple vulnerability. Check it. We have a YouTube video on that if you guys want to check it out.
Yeah.
All
right, that's our key takeaways. So we'll hang out and take some more questions. I know we have another question already.
We have another one on there. This one says, question 2, we don't have a hardware security team, just general IT staff. That's pretty normal. What are the top 2 or 3 signs that a connected device might be exposing more data or access than we expect?
Look at the volume of traffic coming through
Yeah.
it. So a lot of IT folks are not monitoring your network. And honestly, you could talk to any third parties that do network monitoring for you. But as Matt referred to, it's fairly simple to set up Wireshark. So you can just put a device on an isolated segment, turn on Wireshark, or just watch the logs for your network equipment and determine if the amount of data being exported is in line with what you expect, what ports or protocols is it using. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us a line over LinkedIn.
Yeah,
We're always interested to hear about new devices.
Yeah. Question 3. I think we've got time for one more, right?
Yeah, we have time for one more.
Okay. Some of the samples you've mentioned involve undocumented modems or cloud connections. Is there an easy way for a smaller shop to detect unexpected outbound traffic from devices on our network? And yeah, this goes back to, I think, what we just said for the last one.
I think people are having similar questions like, how can you detect
Yeah,
this?
how can you find out if this is actually happening? Again, if you're using something like a packet capture utility like Wireshark, it's very easy to isolate whatever that device is and just take a look at what the traffic is.
Yeah.
It'll show you exactly where it's going, what protocol it's using, how much is going out the door, and if it looks weird, take a closer look at it, or hire a professional. Call someone who has done this before and have them take a look.
Yeah. We have one more question that I think is good. If our budget is tight, and these days, whose isn't, What is the best starting point for a basic procurement policy so we don't accidentally order risky smart devices? Okay, first of all, to create policies these days, start using AI. Whether if you're on Microsoft, use Copilot. I mean, policies, you can often create templates and reveal very little sensitive information about your organization.
True.
So definitely leverage AI for a basic template. But again, start when you look to procure things, look at what country they're manufactured in, try to stick with the same vendor or vendors so that you can vet once and then, repeat the procurement many times. I would start there. Keeping it as simple as possible is key. And again, ask anybody that supports you with implementation, does this device have remote access? Do your Google homework, things like that.
Yeah, there's a couple of other industries that agencies inside the United States anyway, that are going to start certifying devices as safe, especially Internet of Things devices. The name keeps changing on it, but within the next couple of years, we're supposed to see an actual smart label on devices that showcases whether or not the firmware can be updated, the passwords can be changed, what the security settings should be for it. So just keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I think that was actually one of our first episodes almost a year ago now.
Yeah, we did an episode on that.
Yeah, so we're due for an update. But anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. It was fascinating to learn more about the latest updates on Chinese manufactured devices. And I have no doubt we'll be seeing more news about Chinese state-sponsored hacking over the next few weeks. So stay tuned. We'll do another episode on China's use of AI in their hacking and a big analysis of the hacking tools that just got leaked. So thanks again for joining us live. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.